Hi, this is Michael Dorn, Lieutenant Commander Worf from Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, and you're listening to Trek FM.
Tea Earl Grey, hot.
A special Trek.fm Earl Grey event announcement for Star Trek Las Vegas. Listeners, you know Bridgemates from Earl Grey episodes 82, 109, and 141, as well as To the Journey, 117, and Standard Orbit 102. There's even the original trivia panel show Encounter at All Good Things from Earl Grey 137. So Earl Grey is proud to announce a live presentation of Super Bridgemates at the Star Trek Las Vegas 50th Anniversary Convention on Friday, August 5th from 12:30 to 1:15 p.m. It will be held at the Roddenberry stage at Quark's Bar at the Rio. Your favorite team here at Earl Grey of Free Enterprise will attempt to escape defeat, again, against two rival Bridgemate teams, Team Lizard Babies, Charlene Schmidt and Tristan Riddell, and the Council of Mistresses, Andy Vanderkolk and Jera Hodge. When it comes to celebrating the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, regular Bridgemates simply won't do. And that's why this game show will be Super Bridgemates, a fun-filled comedic game show involving fans, cosplayers, and audience members. Not only will the teams compete in hilarious trivia, but those in the audience will participate by acting out selected scenes from our favorite Star Trek moments, and cosplayers will help create puzzles for the teams to solve. It's all about the love of Trek. So we hope all the listeners who will be coming to Star Trek Las Vegas will join us, Earl Grey, and all your favorite co-hosts and fellow listeners for Super Bridgemates at Star Trek Las Vegas at the Roddenberry stage. Welcome to another serving of Earl Grey, where we talk all things Star Trek The Next Generation. I'm Philip Gilfus, and I would be in the center seat of the bridge if I was on duty, but I'm actually in my captain's quarters today. And, in this informal setting, I'm joined by my talented co-host, Darren Moser, who seems to be leafing through my Shakespeare book. How are you doing, Darren?
I'm doing well. Surprisingly, it's actually true. You haven't experienced Shakespeare until you've heard it in the original Klingon.
You and your audiobooks. Now, I'm also joined by my awesome co-host, Daniel Prue, who is wearing his usual off-duty outfit. How are you doing, Daniel? And doesn't that thing feel drafty?
Philip, I'm going to tell you, we are mid-summer here, and it is quite hot, so the draft is quite pleasant, I must say.
Oh, goodness. You and your rise-aware. Well, the reason your Earl Grey crew has left the bridge dark this week is because this is our last show before we live for Star Trek Las Vegas. I thought this was a great time after 150 episodes of talking Next Gen, whether it's the characters, the technology, the social morality aspects, games, and all things in between, to reflect on the enduring popularity of TNG. So guys, this marks the 50th anniversary of Star Trek. And next year is the 30th anniversary of TNG itself. Why are we still talking about these things in 2016? It's like theoretically doing a podcast about it every single week for 3 years, So, this is just going to be a round table here since we're in the quarters here. Maybe we'll have a spirited discussion about the Prime Directive. Maybe Daniel will try and call a pen pal. We don't know. Things are going to be unpredictable this episode. So,
Daniel!
So, we'll just start with the big questions and go from there. So, Darren, I'm going to throw the big softball to you. How do you explain TNG's enduring popularity?
Well, I think one of the interesting things about TNG, just in Star Trek in general, being a franchise of 50 years, is, we're seeing it now as we prepare for I was going to say Star Trek 2017, but now we have a title, Star Trek Discovery. As we prepare for Star Trek Discovery, I can't help but think back to the summer of, 87 as, they're hearing in the newspapers, I guess, is where you would hear such things, about this new Star Trek show. This new Star Trek show that didn't have Kirk and didn't have Spock. And I think our fandom getting through that and being able to embrace new things and a new crew and a new ship and a new setting really turned a corner in what it is to be a Star Trek show. And all that to say, I think because of that, and then because of, it was like 28 years or so stretch that we, maybe I'm carrying the zero too much, but there was a huge stretch that we had solid Star Trek on television between Enterprise and Voyager and Deep Space Nine and Next Gen and movies, and it was awesome. So I think that momentum just really solidified, Star Trek. But I think, as we all agree that we enjoy the Next Gen as our favorite series, that it launched that. And other people may disagree that it's the best or their favorite, and that's per personal opinion. But where it is in the history of the franchise of saying, look, we can tell more stories, we can tell new stories, and I'm hoping that Star Trek Discovery does that for this next generation. And I'm glad they didn't call it the next generation, because that's really not a good title. But no, I feel that Next Gen, the TNG, helped propel this into really a franchise. Both literally, but also, emotionally.
All right. Now, Daniel, we talk about this, of course, every week. But, this is a show, TNG, is set in the 24th century, the future, made in the late 80s and early 90s. So we've talked about this all, but do the characters, do they still hold up, do you think?
Yeah, totally. That's a common criticism, right, of TNG is that the characters are kind of stuffy, right? And
not now, but
and too perfect and all of this stuff. I understand where people are coming from when they say those kinds of things, but I couldn't disagree more. It's part of why I love these characters so much. These people are the best of the best in the future. In this optimistic utopian future, we get to kind of spend our time with these awesome characters who aren't perfect, certainly, and they never were. Criticism kind of puts a little blanket over that, but they are an ideal to strive for, in the words of Picard, right? And Picard especially, but of course it trickles down to all the other characters as well. It's that outlook, it's that optimism, it's that kind of positivity is one of the reasons I think the show was supremely popular, even in the beginning when it wasn't super awesome, and still remains to this day an amazing piece of television history.
Now, Darren, what do you think? In 2016, when you're watching TNG on your streaming device or whatever, do you make
in beautiful HD quality?
That's right. Are there certain allowances you make, that? Do you filter that's 1991? Okay.
Masks. Oh, sorry, you're asked Darren. Sorry about that.
I think everyone always gives allowances to the things that they enjoy the most, and there's no such thing as a perfect series or a perfect episode. But I think to just enjoy watching something that you enjoy and not have to over critique it, just to be like, oh, you know what, I want to watch a cool cliffhanger. I'm going to pop in one of the season finales, or I want to watch a Data episode, and there's tons of those. That's what's so fun about watching something that you enjoy, is you can just enjoy it. You don't have to podcast about it every week for 3 years. You can, and that can be fun as well. But just, I don't feel that this podcast would have worked if it was just one person talking for 3 years. It has to be the three of us, has to be multiple people, sharing their discussion and their view. We have very different views and different parts of Star Trek Next Gen that we like the best, and I think that's what's helped this show do so well. But yeah, for allowances, I would say, a little bit of the effects, which still hold up fairly well.
Especially
a little
in
bit
HD.
of the. Yeah, oh man, look at I can read the screens. I mean,
I'm just saying the phaser's coming out of the wrong end. Why can't we fix that?
But I mean, I do think though, in some of the earlier seasons, as they were trying to get their footing and the acting, was a little wooden. But I'm able to look past
Sorry,
that.
Darren, I couldn't hear you without the screaming soundtrack playing.
Well, yes. But I mean, as we've been doing our essential Trek, I mean, that's helping us revisit what we really enjoy about, well, so far seasons 1 through 3. So there's always going to be a bit of an allowance with something you enjoy, but it doesn't make you enjoy it any less.
And, Daniel, I often think about people, on Trek FM or all fandoms of Trek, when they talk about TOS, it's always like, well, there's some, maybe some sexism, whatever, you make allowances, see the bigger message. TNG, almost 30 years ago at this point, do you still see things of like, okay, yeah, there's times, or do you think we still have to always give a little asterisk explanation to something about our favorite show?
Code of honor.
Well, yeah.
No, of course, there's always things, and there always will be, because the writers and the directors and producers will have blind spots or things that they don't think about or whatever. On the whole, but even TOS, which I think suffers from that the most, obviously being a product of when it was created in the 60s. I mean,
almost 50 years ago, Dan.
Crazy how that worked out. There are times that every Star Trek show, but TOS specifically that we're talking about right now, just, knocked it out of the parks. Was perfect, essentially. Not perfect, but was so great, was so much better than the sum of its parts. There are certain episodes that you watch and you're like, man, this is so good. And there are no things that you have to forgive. And it's the same thing with every series, and it's the same thing with TNG. If you watch, the Drumhead or Measure of a Man, it's like, yeah, really, we're always giving a little bit of conceit, I think, to Star Trek, because these are people walking around in funny pajama pants and stuff. But besides that, no, it's when it's good, it's so good that you overlook any flaws. You not overlook them, but you can look past them, certainly.
Right, and I think about the fact that a lot of TNG is very of the 80s, and by that I just mean Picard's character, who is mostly nonviolent, seeks out diplomatic solutions. That's very 80s conceit, sort of the kindler, gentler, captain. And then you have the counselor on board, and these are all very things that are from the 80s, but I think they endure. I think it wasn't necessarily just stuck in that time, as I'm sure there's things that were in the 60s that endure from TOS, and then, the 90s that in Deep Space Nine and Voyager still endure.
Oh, carpet.
Yeah, we still do use carpet, Daniel, and I think.
Yeah, I'm not on spaceships though. I don't think.
Oh yeah, what's a spaceship you've been on, Daniel?
I think it had to do when gravity began on spaceships. Without gravity, you don't really need carpet because you don't really have a floor.
See, I would think you would need it even more without gravity because you're hitting your head.
You think they could just make squishy metal in the future? I don't know what kind of that would be.
That sounds totally safe.
I like that. You have Scotty inventing transparent aluminum. Daniel creates squishy metal.
I'm just saying, it would make sense. There are times it would work.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so since we are talking about the enduring popularity, let's kind of just nitpick some stuff that we've talked about over 3 years. So, Darren, as far as the alien, outside the main characters, as far as either the aliens, whether just the ones we kind of brought over from TOS or maybe reinvented, or the ones that we sort of created, what do you think are the most enduring aliens, either as a race or individuals, that sort of remain oh God, TNG, that's what I think of?
Well, I would definitely say the Klingons and the Romulans are the top two. You have specific, members of those races by name that you can pull out, be it Tomalak or, Galron or not Galron. There's so many. And while, yes, in other shows like DS9 does have a lot of Klingons, I do feel that, the parts that we got to see, definitely turned another page for those races.
And not a dark page.
No.
And I mean, of course, the Borg, right?
The Borg.
Yeah. Borg, yes.
And I mean, I was in a movie theater, obviously, to watch. Well, actually, I wasn't watching Beyond. I was there with my Star Trek fan group. We were just doing a fan table, and we met someone coming out of the theater, and he was like, "You know what the next Star Trek movie needs? The Borg." And we're kind of like, I mean, I don't know, for the J.
Yes.
I don't know. I think that's.
Yes.
But anyways,
was he from the future?
Yes.
But I think that does speak right to the enduring popularity of the Borg, Daniel.
Bring on the Borg. I know. Look, I am in the way minority. I've said this before, but man, Captain Kirk versus the Borg would be so cool. Oh man, you mix up the timeline. It makes sense, Look, we're. I guess we can't say spoilers for the. Yeah. Bring on the Borg is all I'm gonna say.
Let's not be that podcast, Dan.
For those who are first time JJing.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to say anything about Beyond, so I caught myself there. But yes, I love the Borg.
Well, it would be. I mean, how cool would it be to have a Borg at the helm of the USS Discovery?
Yeah, that would be weird.
I mean, that would be weird.
I mean,
yes.
so you're like a reformed Borg?
Like 7?
Like, what would that look like?
Yeah.
I mean, like...
Maybe he was integrated into the chair. He just never got up.
I think you got to make it a woman character there, because I think that's something we need more. So a woman reformed Borg.
Maybe she could wear some
sounds
sort of
like it's been done a little bit before there.
Kind of suit with no room for air. How would we do that, though?
Now, Daniel, I know one thing at least you talk about a lot, if not implicitly, but the 24th century, about that TNG created a lot. You had TOS, which we love and enjoy, but that TNG, not a reboot. I don't know, you could use that word if you wanted to, but we created this 24th century world that then goes on for 2 more series. What was that TNG did there with creating this new world, or rebooting it, or reshaping the 24th century of Star Trek?
Yeah, well, it's amazing world building is what it did. Of course, TOS did. TOS wasn't super consistent from episode to episode. Of course, all Star Trek kind of suffers from that to a degree, but the writing at the time wasn't at the same kind of level it was later on, and you get some recurring villains, you kind of get a sense of things, but sometimes they would throw some crazy wackadoo thing in there, and wackadoo, man, that's going way back. But then, yeah, of course, TNG comes along, right, and starts to create an actual living, breathing kind of a universe, and the Federation and all this stuff, and of course, it was built on the bedrock of TOS. But we get to explore corners of this universe, and through Deep Space Nine and Voyager, and then, of course, hopefully soon now with Discovery, that we haven't seen before. Although maybe not, because it might be in between. We're really not sure where it's going to be placed yet. But yeah, TNG's had such brilliant world building that it was able to build and sustain 2 spin-off shows off of itself that existed at the same time in that same universe. And that's, maybe like CSI has done something like that, but it's kind of unheard of. That's pretty impressive for science fiction, for sure.
I don't know why you said that, but then I kind of just think of we're the CIS New York. No, I don't know.
So we're not the original CSI, but we're the second iteration.
John Luke is just putting on his sunglasses every beginning of every episode.
Deal with it.
Engage.
It's time to engage. Q are singing this song.
Q. So
who is Q?
So Darren, if you imagine through some temporal anomaly, you get to talk to someone who has seen all of TOS and all the TOS, well, not all the TOS movies, but till 1986. All the TOS movies, and of course they've seen all of TAS backwards and forwards as well. And how do you explain to them what this 24th century is like? Like, they've seen all of Star Trek, but you're like, okay, TNG it's going to be this whole new thing. How do you explain to them what the 24th century of Star Trek is like?
I would say everything's bigger for sure, but it takes Star Trek and then time has progressed. So we have different allies, we have different enemies, we have bigger enemies, we have more exploring we're doing. It's still the same formula, but a larger principal cast, that's being focused on, a larger ship, and you get much more reoccurring guest stars. But overall, it's also just a longer series. So we just get 7 seasons of this show and all of the tales it has to tell us.
I'm just imagining what 7 seasons of TOS would have been. Anyway, yeah. So Standard Orbit, do that one.
Look, Star Trek Continues is working as fast as it can. Okay,
under some vovas. But yeah, because I
here's a Bitly link to their new download.
Well, okay, TAS is season 4, so I guess that does count. So, okay, so Darren, you're I know both you and Daniel are tech guys, but I'll pick on you first. So, Darren, in the late 90s and 2000s, much like Future's End states in the Voyager, this has been a time of rapid technological advancement, apparently due to a time ship crashing in the 60s. Oh. Yeah. But anyway, so TOS obviously, gets the whole we invented flip phones. But does the technology we see on TNG through 7 years, does that still resonate, or do we go okay?
I would say so. If anything, just for the fact of the computer, the fact of the level of voice command that they have with that is still something we haven't achieved today. I mean, I'm sorry, Siri and Cortana or whatever. We're not quite there yet. But I think that's, it almost ties into your previous question where in TOS they were kind of still on that battleship submarine, on the frontier, had the hardships of space travel, where in Next Gen it's all those hardships have it's become commonplace and things are just easier. We have recreation everywhere on this ship. It'd be really hard to be bored. But I think that is that next step of we're still having these kinds of technologies infuse into our society. And unfortunately, the big difference between us and Next Gen is the maturity of us as a species to actually do something with it.
Do you feel like we could not handle photon torpedoes right now?
Oh, heck no. Yeah.
Now, what about you, Daniel? I know you're a big tech guy as well. What do you is there stuff you kind of roll your eyes at now, or is there stuff that you think still inspires people to want to make that when they grow up, watch TNG?
No, yeah. You do. I guess it's a bit of both, I would say. Again, understanding when it was created allows you to kind of see how forward-thinking they were. They just didn't see, of course, nobody did in the early 90s, see the kind of rapid progression of technology that we experienced, in the 90s and early 2000s. So some of the things are cutesy, like what they got wrong. Like we talked about 17,000 pads, like why would they need all of those? But the fact that they got the pad, I mean, come on, that was incredible that they got that right. And
see, in the future, there's no money, Daniel, so you can buy as many iPads as you want. Look, Picard's cracked half those screens.
So
you could build them out of worthless gold.
Of course, we had an entire episode about missing technology from the 24th century, which is episode number, insert number here.
I'm just telling you guys, security cameras, great idea.
So, but I think they were very forward-thinking in a lot of ways. And like Darren said, specifically, the computer is fantastic and great. But I think kind of more off in our future still, but interesting technology to play with is the one that they did play with the most, which is, of course, the holodeck / transporter / replicator technology, which is obviously still something that we're not going to achieve anytime in the near future. It's still very, very much within the realm of science fiction, but, we're starting to make little tiny steps towards those kinds of things. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool to see.
So I think that's interesting because I feel like of all technology in TNG, holodeck is the one most likely to happen because it's recreation based. Right. Like, I'm sure there's people thinking of warp drive, but they're like, let's see, I could try to make faster than light or cool holodeck stuff. I want to play Dixon Hill, man.
Yeah.
Let's do that. But it's today's and tomorrow's gamers. That's what they're making.
I'm just looking forward to the holodeck version of Pokemon Go. I can't wait. It's going to be great.
That'd be cool. Or maybe like the holodeck is your phone, and you see the all the holographic things on sort of you could put the goddess just in front of you somehow. But
I kid, of course, everybody, because I know it wouldn't be a holodeck version of Pokemon Go. It would just be a holodeck version of regular Pokemon, and it would be awesome. You could just go and catch all the Pokemon. I'm sorry, I got too excited there.
All right. So, Darren, obviously, how we watch TV, like now, this decade, and who knows what's going to be by next year, is totally different. And so, it used to be you'd have your dusty VHS TNG tape you'd put in and you could watch it and spread it to all your friends. But now we have streaming, we have, apps, we have all that. So, like, can fans still discover TNG? Does the streaming revolution ensure that there can be, like, first-time TNGers still?
Absolutely, Philip. Actually, one of my Twitter friends, his handle is @DougWatchin, and he is actually going through TNG for the first time right now. And it is really fun to see him, like, he'll kind of like live tweet it. I think today he watched, the end of season 1 Conspiracy. And, he is the moment where like Picard starts to eat the beetles and he's like, oh, it's getting a little weird. And then when like the beetle's crawling up the guy's arm into his mouth, it's like, guys, it just got weirder. And it's so funny because I don't think he's ever seen any TNG, and he's just taking it in episode by episode, and it's so fun to watch. I mean, even, our friend Andy, who is first time trekking. So there's definitely people out there who have not seen TNG, but it is so much more accessible now. I mean, you have it on All Access, you have it on Netflix, you have it on the Blu-rays, you have it on the DVDs, you have it in so many places. It's still on reruns on Sci-Fi and other channels.
I think it's actually 75% of BBC America programming.
Yeah.
It totally is. I wouldn't think BBC America is synonymous with Star Trek The Next Generation reruns, but you know what? It is.
I mean, it does star British men. I can see the logic.
Well, he's French.
Remember. Oh, that's true.
Oh, that's right. That's right. No. But yes, there's definitely new people discovering Enterprise, Voyager, all the shows. And so to those people, I say enjoy it and find people who will encourage you in your watching habits and can talk about, just all the nuances, but then hopefully not spoil things like I did with Andy.
Right. Well, it's interesting because I know Netflix kind of caters to the individual, but I swear when it looks at like, what people are watching that or whatever that banner is called, I will see Next Generation pop up a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that means. There's a lot of nerds watching Netflix. I don't know. But
there's 178 episodes, Phil. That's a lot to watch.
It is.
And they're 45-minute episodes. This isn't no, half-hour sitcom.
But Daniel, I was walking around a store the other day, a nerd store. Look, as always, one eye open for Star Trek stuff, and of course I'll see Kirk, Spock, all that stuff. And so it makes me wonder that TNG, and to me, and this is a Philip statement, y'all can agree or disagree, that to me TNG is like the Trek of mass appeal. So like you can argue that TOS is more popular. Like when people think Star Trek, they think Kirk, Spock. You can make a picture, right? But like most people who have likely seen TNG, like they may think TOS, but have they actually ever seen an episode of TOS? And I mean, just because it's 2019, the person's age, most likely to have watched TNG. So like, yeah, and I think to me, and again, this is Philip, diehard fans are more likely to be like, well, my favorite's Deep Space Nine or Voyager or Enterprise, while more like casual fans are more likely to like TNG. So do you think that's right, A, what I said, or B, why do you think that is?
Yeah, well, I mean, as probably most listeners to our show are aware of how the show was produced as a syndicated show, I think had a lot to do with the popularity of it. Basically, the fact that any of these local stations could buy it up and show it at any time of the day, which, if I remember correctly, was pretty much the hours between 6 and 8 every weekday growing up. I think that's a huge part of it. Like, it was hitting right at the right time, right? The late 80s, the early 90s, cable was really getting big, and all of the culture, I think, was just ripe for it as well. And it's just, I feel like it just was exposed to as many people as humanly possible, just the right time. Before everybody had 6 trillion channels, but after this whole kind of syndication thing would have been able to work. It was just I just think it was just the right time. I really do, and that's why everybody has seen TNG. That's why it is so popular in pop culture, and and that's speaking besides, of course, the quality of the show and stuff like that. I just think that the distribution was new, and it was very, very effective at getting in front of a lot of people's eyeballs at just the right time.
Yeah, and because, like I said, I think it's to me odd that people can make references who I don't think of as Star Trek fans, but they know who the Borg are. They know maybe Data and Picard. Like, they will know these things. I'm like, really? It sort of have this. Maybe it's like not as deep as maybe like Deep Space Niner, who like knows all 50 million characters. But like it's sort of wide as far as TNG. And fandom might be a heavy word, but just like people who have watched Star Trek, they're more likely just to sit down and watch a TNG than maybe the other series. And maybe that's wrong. I mean, obviously, we're doing an Earl Grey TNG show. We're a little biased here. So, like, they're like when you meet fellow Star Trek fans, is there something different about people who like TNG other than versus the other series?
I don't think there's necessarily anything different. Maybe
they're better people, right?
Well, we're more attractive, I think, for sure. I mean, that's just demonstrable. But besides that,
well, I would say, at least in my experience of people I've met with like the other series, like DS9 and Voyager and Enterprise, you have a much broader range of people who like it or dislike it. Whereas it's hard for me to find people who don't at least enjoy TNG. It's kind of like, I like TNG, but this is my favorite, or I like TNG and Voyager, is really fun. But no, I think, like I've said several times about why I enjoyed this podcast, is that when you're able to talk that kind of deeper level Trek talk every week at Tuesday, that it's a lot of fun. And so, I mean, I'm hoping to run into many people who enjoy TNG at Star Trek Las Vegas coming up soon, coming up this week. And I think that's going to be a lot of fun to do. So yeah, no, it's always fun to meet fellow Trekkies in the wild.
Okay, and so let's talk episodes. We're being very general discussion here. So this is going to be my question for y'all. What episode do you think remains as relevant today as when it aired on TNG?
Measure of Man.
Okay. And why do you think so? Why do you think so? Both of those.
Trouble with Tribbles. No, I'm just kidding. Well, Measure of Man is the person as property, and the drumhead really should have been the Sins of the Father. It's a little more accurate title, but that's basically what they're talking about. I mean, that I just spurred those out without even thinking, but there's so many episodes in Next Gen that fall into that category. What do you think, Daniel, of some that are just as relevant today?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was thinking Drumhead immediately, just because that's essentially, it's security, privacy kind of stuff that we're dealing with now. I mean, I think all good Star Trek, well, not all good, that's hard to say that, but most good Star Trek.
I mean, Bride of Chaotica is so relevant today, guys.
I think I've learned never to light candles thanks to Sub Rosa. I'm a torch flashlight person only.
Most good Star Trek is good social commentary. So, and those kind of themes can be repeated throughout, right? Measure of Man, of course, is about slavery. Is about the rights of people, different groups of people, and that is literally probably never going to go out of style. It's going to be just as relevant today as it is 20 years from now, as it was 20 years ago. So, and of course, not all, because Star Trek is a very varied thing, so it's tough to pin it all down like that. But certainly, a lot of it has those enduring themes, I think.
And then, of course, TNG has this reputation. It's the cerebral one. It's the non-violent, comfortable. We all love each other, and let's talk it out Trek. So, like, is that fair? Or is that completely wrong?
Do you mean non-violent as in, like, the no conflict between the characters? Because there was lots of violence as far as, people. I mean, that guy sitting at the helm hands on
We
his
killed
cheeks.
all of our villains every movie.
I think it is, as a criticism, I understand it. It's obviously not completely true. There are times that TNG doesn't fit that mold. But I think overall, sure, yeah, I would agree that it's the most cerebral, probably the more peace-loving, probably the most optimistic of all of the Star Treks. And all of those people throw those out as criticisms occasionally, and I will defend TNG to the death with those things, because those are the things I love the most.
Well, Daniel, you can't defend them to the death, because that's kind of against the whole point.
I guess you're right.
To the pain.
To the pain.
To the pain. Nice one.
And I love it for those reasons. I want it to be the most. That's why I love Captain Picard, because he is the most cerebral. He's the most thought-provoking captain. He's that to me, in my mind. Of course, maybe you think differently. That's fine. But I take those kinds of jabs and I think of them as nothing but reasons of why I love the show.
Well, because it makes me think, and we discussed this a couple of minutes ago, talking about kind of TOS, TNG, and forward. TNG, whether it was just because, we're just going to reset everything, we're like, Klingons are allies now. But no, Klingons are the bad guy. No, they're allies now. I'm like, okay, but...
There's one right there on the bridge every week.
Yeah, and so, to me, that's interesting where, and I suppose this is a veiled criticism on my part, that changed with other series, where they're the bad guys again. And so, okay, but then that doesn't do the whole concept, because the concept is like, we're flipping everything. The bad guys are now our friends, which of course, is the obvious metaphor between, Sylvians and everyone who's been former enemies that are now friends. But I just think that's an interesting thing that sometimes that's a hard concept, to have the people we think of enemies are now, we're going to be part of our crew now. And it's very tempting to be like, it's cool, and we're just having conflict instead of having to deal with them, and then having to fall in love with them, and then having to worry that their baby is going to be like their mom. But anyway, enough about Voyager.
Oh boy.
But one thing we often talk about is the high definition of TNG. But now, of course, I will bring up, and you guys correct me if you feel like I'm mischaracterizing this. So the sale, or not sale, of the TNG Blu-rays is often cited why we're not going to have Blu-ray DS9 or Blu-ray Voyager. Do you think, and have you all heard that? I mean, do you think that the disappointing sales is more testament to maybe TNG isn't that popular? Or is it more, do you think it's more about like, people just don't buy hard media anymore? Or what do you think, guys?
Yeah, no, it's Netflix. You can get now, and it wasn't this way when the discs were coming out, but now you can get HD episodes on Netflix, and nobody buys discs anymore. I mean, and forgive me, small percentage of you listeners that do buy them, because I'm sure a lot of you do, because we're Star Trek fans. We're going to buy up whatever we can, but I think for the most part, the general public, very rarely buys discs, and they were extremely expensive when they first came out. So
yeah, they were like $120 or something a season.
Yeah. And then you're like, wait a minute, so I can watch them slightly better quality, actually beautiful, crisp HD. No, and spend that money.
There's really no comparison.
Or I can just watch them on Netflix. And now they don't even have that incentive. They can just watch them on Netflix. So no, I think that's entirely the reason that nobody really buys DVDs or discs anymore. And I really don't think it's saying much about the popularity of TNG. I just think it's saying, I think it has more to say about the unpopularity of disc-based media at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's much more the format rather than its popularity. And again, if you're offering almost the exact same thing, I mean, I will still I have a couple seasons on Blu-ray, but I'll usually queue it up on Netflix because it's just faster than getting the disc, picking which disc has that episode on it, putting it in. But there are times when I will, because it just looks so good, and it does look a notch above streaming HD, but not by much. And I mean, I want HD DS9 and Voyager, but I totally get the economic. I mean, hey guys, Star Trek's a business. You know, it's not.
It's like some kind of
I know.
enterprise.
Oh,
Oh. But I get that. But I am so glad that they did that treatment to it and helped preserve it as well. So it's good.
I do think too, and I'm not the first person to think this. I'm sure it's been talked about on the network before, but I do think that they will eventually get around to doing Deep Space Nine and Voyager, just for posterity's sake, just so it can look just as good up against the rest of the shows. I mean, they went back and obviously did TOS, so it's like when something from 40 years ago is looking better than more recent shows. I feel they will update it at some point. I feel like, but who knows how long that'll take.
Now, I mean, we're going to talk about episodes again. So guys, this will go to both of y'all. If you're just going to somehow have this free moment, what is going to be your go-to TNG episode? You have all the chores are done, nothing's on your to-do list. You got Netflix in front of you. You're like, I want to watch some TNG. What episode are you just going to fire up right away? So, Daniel, what's your go-to TNG episode?
So my favorite episode is Lower Decks, which I'm tempted to say. But one that actually came to my mind first, surprisingly, is Tapestry. Because it's great. It's obviously a fantastic episode. It's a lot of fun. Also has a really good message and is very character-driven as well. It's kind of, it's kind of an amazing episode. So I won't say Lower Decks because it is my favorite episode. That's the easy answer. I'm gonna say Tapestry.
I like how you love TNG so much. Your favorite episode was when none of the characters are in it.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway.
Now, Darren, what about
actually,
you?
both of those episodes have
very little.
They feature very little of the actual main cast. That's funny. I didn't even think about that.
Darren, what about you? What's your go-to TNG episode that nobody's in? You're like Inner Light. I feel like Riker got his good 5 seconds.
But honestly, the first one that came to mind was just like Peak Performance. Because it's a really fun episode. The A plot and the B plot are both really strong. Versus, Data's Stratagema championship versus, Will Riker sitting in the captain's chair again. He does sit in the captain's chair a couple times. It's just usually against the Enterprise. But
I do have to say that is one of my favorite Earl Grey covers. Riker uses cheat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What about you, Philip? Which one would you pop in?
My first thing I want to say is always Family.
I thought about Family too, and I was like, it's a little too dark to just pop in.
I mean, I would say dark.
Heavy.
It's
heavy,
very heavy,
yeah.
And so I guess you do have to be in a certain mood to put that on. So just like for fun, I don't know. Because I mean, there's so many choices. Obviously, I can't really think of one that I would probably, like me, I would, at this point in my fandom, I would probably watch something I don't remember as well. Like we've been talking about The Most Toys recently.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched that. I don't. It's not an episode I really know very well. I mean, I know it, but like, I would be like, I want to watch that. I don't think I really remember it that well. So,
well, Philip has homework. He's going to go watch The Most Toys.
Exactly.
So,
Daniel's got to get his Lieutenant J cosplay ready.
Oh,
so now we're going to reverse this question. So again, TNG episodes is the category, but what episode, if you wanted to show someone, and you can, in your mind, you can say either they're already a TNG or a Star Trek fan or they're not, what episode do you think best represents TNG?
Didn't we already have an episode about this? I feel like we have.
So then you should know the answer, shouldn't you, Darren?
Oh, it's probably season 1 of EG.
I mean, Trek on the First Date was what I think you're thinking of. But what's going to be your episode that you, and not necessarily for the person, but you think this best represents TNG? I think it's tempting to say like best of both worlds, and maybe that's the answer. I don't know. And then you don't show them the second part because be like, hey, I just whetted your appetite for you. You got to figure
how it is. You know how it is.
But what about y'all? What would you say is it doesn't have to be but a episode that represents TNG the best? I mean, Measure the Man we've already said, so I'll keep that away.
You're going to be a little surprised at my answer here.
I mean, Mask, Daniel, really?
No. Oh my goodness, now I can't even remember the name of the episode. No.
Pen.
No, what is the one with the one I always talk about? The one with the proto.
Who watches the Watchers?
Who watches the Watchers? Thank you, Darren. Who watches the Watchers is my answer. That's what came up first in my.
It's obviously not his favorite because he doesn't remember the title.
I mean, obviously the answer is Justice. I didn't want to blurt it out, but
I love that episode so much, and we've talked a bazillion times about it. It's great. To me, it's very, very TNG essency. And to me, that's what when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, that's what I think of when I think of TNG.
You think of people bargaining with Troy for Riker's service.
I think of Picard getting shot in the chest. There's a lot of good stuff in there. Duck blinds,
right?
A word that I did not know existed before TNG.
Oh, see, now we can always tell who goes out hunt.
Yeah, no, not me. That would be the first thing that popped into my head.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Darren?
I would say it's kind of a little unorthodox because you get a little bit more out of it if you know a lot more of Trek, but it does have a lot of Star Trek-iness to it. But I would say Yesterday's Enterprise.
Oh, very good.
So you get the time shift and you get the, definitely at the beginning you're going to be like, what the heck is going on? Because the majority of the episode is not our characters. They're mirror or whatever.
Because you love TNG so much, Darren.
But I think just the choices they make, and I think that'd be a good start. And then whatever you compare it to in your second episode would really show, we're not this military dystopian, sadness. This is, and then you, I don't know, go to a fun episode. Like,
I always thought you guys were going to go with Macduff because there you get to discover the characters in the conundrum. You're like, you get to see them actually literally discover themselves.
And Macduff is there, and that's all that matters.
Or I would say Disaster.
That is actually a great choice. That is actually a really great choice. I would say that, yeah. Good.
Yeah, actually, no, I say Disaster would be better because you get there are actually our characters. They're not, again, the alt versions, but you have the captain and they're all dealing with their hardships. And
Data, I'm not going to take off your head.
Well, I can't take your head off, sir. So.
Oh, goodness. Okay, guys. Well, we've certainly been having a great discussion here. So I'm just going to do this final question, which I think is kind of the ultimate question here, to each of you. If someone, in this case it's me because I'm talking right now, if someone asked you why you do a weekly podcast to talk about TNG for 3 years with people you've never met in real life before each and every week, how do you explain that? So I'll go first. So, because I don't ever get to talk about it with anyone else. That's a large part right there. I have so many things to say, guys. But I think, I don't know, and it's all very personal, I suppose. And sometimes I wonder, as we're talking about the popularity of TNG, we're all relatively the same age, so maybe we're just very of the time, and maybe it's not fair. The reason TNG is so popular is because we grew up in the 80s and 90s. That's fine. So maybe that's no more than that. But to me, it is the characters and the situations in the world and the struggles and the way it made you think as a 10-year-old. That taught me how to see the world, for good or for ill. And so that's how I see the world a lot of the ways now. Other influences I had as I grew up, of course. And so, but to me, that's how it sort of taught me how to see the world, how to be ideal about the world, how to deal with situations and conflicts and Romulans. I mean, that came up a lot in the 20s. I don't want to talk about it. That was a dark time. The
darkest time?
Well, it's cloaked with many. So to me, that's sort of just is the legacy for me, the enduring popularity of TNG, because it just comes up even in the episodes in and of itself, but just like, oh, this reminds me of that episode or this dilemma or this character or what would Geordi really, and things like that. And so that's why I enjoy talking about it, and that's why I enjoy TNG so much, because it taught me how to see the world. But But Darren, what about you? Why do you do this?
Well, I think that even though you haven't met someone in person, doesn't mean you can't be friends. I've learned that through pen pals. No.
Darren!
Is that what this whole thing has been the whole time?
My hand's been right over the button to close this conversation for like 3 years.
Like, do you have like a discussion with your family about whether
His whole family's in that room right there. They've heard us now, Philip. They can't hang up.
But no, I think, one of the reasons I really like TNG, especially nowadays, there's a lot of good sci-fi out there nowadays, but a lot of it shifts more towards, again, that darker future, that dystopian. And, sometimes I'm tired of that cup and I want to go back to the optimistic future of Star Trek, which I think is one of the things that really sets Star Trek apart, and especially TNG. It just really is optimistic, and look how far we've come, and look at what we can strive for. People talk about representation in television and film being important. I want to see representation of our species. But yeah, so I want to see that representation of us, of humanity being something better. And then it's just a lot of fun. The characters. How many times do we talk about that Star Trek is the characters and the ships, which become characters themselves.
They have babies.
And they do. And but all of that to say, the best reason to do a podcast, in my opinion, is when you're able to have that deeper discussion about any topic, be it sports, be it sci-fi, be it movies, be it politics, or whatever you want to talk about. When you're able to really be yourself and how much you truly enjoy something while you're talking about it, that's fun. You don't have to guard. You don't have to, be like, oh, well, what's this person going to think? No, they're just as deep into it as you are. And except for Philip, who's been bluffing this whole time. But no, it's that's why
wrong again, Albert. Yeah.
But that's why I've been podcasting, so far for these last 3 years, and it's been a lot of fun.
All right, Daniel. For trivia for our listeners, of course, Daniel hosted the very first episode of Earl Grey, so we will give him the last word here on this answering question. So, Daniel, why?
It's interesting that the start of the question you framed it as we all meet people in our lives, and I'm sure you guys have, and they ask, they find out you're a part of the show. Maybe they see it on the internet or whatever, or you tell them.
Maybe you hand them a business card.
Maybe you hand them a card, whatever, and you tell them. And
look, I just got to be home by Monday night is what I'm saying, okay, guys?
Yeah, hey, maybe you enter into a relationship with, you get a new friend or girlfriend or whatever, and you have to be somewhere Monday nights for the next 3 years, and you have to explain that, and it's like you reach this crossroads, right? You're given this question: why do you what do you do? Why do you do it? And you kind of have to make that decision at that point. Now, there's a diplomatic answer. It's Star Trek. I like it. It's just something I do for fun. Blah 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 blah. Just easy, quick answers that you can shoot off. But what you're asking for is the real answer, and the more direct answer, and the deeper answer, and the more emotional answer. And I can only echo what you both said. And it's we do this because we have a love for this property, and because it is amazing to get to talk about these things every week with with people as passionate as you are. Not all of us have access to those kinds of people geographically close to us that we can kind of just go out and talk to, and maybe we have our own network of friends and stuff. Maybe they're not into Star Trek. Maybe we don't have that kind of connection, but the fact that we have made these connections over vast distances and coasts from coast to coast, right? And it's for that reason, because I get to talk about this optimistic future with people who feel the same way. Not the same way about everything, but they have the same love for it that I do. And that is a unique privilege that I have enjoyed these past 3 years, and I will never take that for granted.
Well, the enduring popularity of Star Trek The Next Generation is all we've been talking about for these 3 years. But here's a quick look at what you may have missed elsewhere on the network here at Trek.fm.
Previously on Trek.fm. To the journey! He tweets out, like, hey, walking around with my mobile emitter, hashtag blessed. It's just, I'm sure that's what he's doing.
Gosh. Yep. He's taking photos of his holographic non-dinner.
The 602 Club.
And even the book started this way. And I remember reading the book and being like, what the F is going on? Because it's just such a strange scene. This muggle caretaker in this house making tea. And you're like, what is happening? But really what's being set up is this bookend of Voldemort looming over everything and finally finding a way to return.
Stage 9. A podcast about the people who make Star Trek.
Every chance they have to get him off the bridge of that ship and have him running around on some planet or shooting some guy or jumping on something, they do. And it's like, he's got that chair there. It looks really comfortable. Let's have him sit in it for a while and command a starship.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
You can listen to every show on the network at Trek.fm with links for iTunes, streaming services, and a direct download link. This week of Earl Grey is brought to you by Audible.com. This is a great way for you to read all of the books you want to read but never have time for. Audible is always expanding with over 150,000 titles to choose from. There are classics, current bestsellers, and famous Star Trek books like Prime Directive and Federation. Audible has something for everyone. Now, as a Trek FM listener, you can get a free audiobook of your choice along with a 30-day trial to try out Audible yourself. So give it a try today. Catch up on all those classic Star Trek books you've yet to read. To support Trek FM, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm and sign up today. Again, that's audibletrial.com/trekfm. Thank you, Audible, for supporting Earl Grey and Trek FM. If you are a weekly listener and would like to directly help Earl Grey, please consider becoming a patron of Trek FM. At patreon.com/trekfm, you can choose a pledge level and receive rewards for becoming a Trek FM patron. You'll be inside the observation lounge of our network, able to participate in our monthly patron roundtable podcasts, and supporting the production of all of our great content. We would like to take this moment to thank our current patron associate producers, Stephen Boyd and Ron Sarna. Thank you for supporting Earl Grey. Connect with other Trek FM listeners on our Facebook discussion group called The Babel Conference, found through the Facebook search field, or like the facebook.com/TrekFM page for show updates and announcements. The network is also on Twitter at TrekFM.
All right, Darren, when people want to talk to you about why you love being in the captain's chair at a tri-weekly basis, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter under username Dr. Sci-Fi. That's DRSCIFI.
All right. And Daniel, when people want to ask you why you shirk your duties about being in a captain's chair at a 2/3 weekly basis, where can people talk to you?
Well, as you mentioned before, I was the first to host, and that is the number one, not the word, as in One Up Dan on Twitter.
All right. And if people want to ask why I always do the indirect method of hosting so I don't actually have to answer questions, they can find more business strategies from me at my handle on Twitter, which is NC Public Servant. That's NC for North Carolina. Well, like we said, this is the last episode until we all meet in Vegas, and so we hope to bring you some exciting shows from Star Trek Las Vegas next when you hear Earl Grey. So until then, make it so.
Endgame.
Live long and prosper.
Fire.